welcome back to WeTalk. WeTalk Sidewalk, the first ever WeTalk Sidewalk. We're in Birmingham, Alabama, here in the Magic City. Yes, and I'm your host, Ondi Timoner. I am a filmmaker who decided to start this show when the Me Too movement started. I thought we should talk about we do and like what we do as women, shaping our culture. And I have been so lucky to be traveling with this show periodically in between making movies myself and getting to be, South by Southwest and Tribeca and live from Airbnb. We've done shows at Art Basel in Miami, and to bring it to Birmingham is like bringing it home. The festival's run by two incredibly powerful women who care so much about film and people and this region, Chloe Cook and Rachel Morgan, and they really, and they really made this happen. They just were determined. They saw WeTalk Sundance, and they were determined to bring it here. So we're very grateful. The whole WeTalk team is, and I want to thank Dell Technologies as well. They've always been incredible partners to creative people, and like myself. And they have come forth just from the very get-go when we launched the show at South by Southwest 2018 and have been our partners ever since. So a shout out to them as well. And I keep forgetting to say, please do follow us on social media, Instagram, and we'll be putting clips of this show up as soon as we possibly can. It's at WeTalk Culture on Facebook and Instagram, and I think on Twitter too. Without further ado, the show really tries to capture what's going on in the region where we are. And obviously, we all know that there's some incredibly powerful, they might be destructive, they might be beneficial, that's what we're going to talk about, boycotts of this region, of Alabama and Georgia. There's a very polarizing abortion bans that were passed in May. And I am joined today by three filmmakers who also are business people in the region. So I'll introduce them now. We'll look at a little bit of their work, and then we'll get into what's going on here. What are the bans, and whether or not the boycotts are really helping or hurting. Which I'm really interested to hear about. So first up, Melodie Sisk, actor, producer, really producer, director, but producer more than anything, badass producer, who has just brought so many films here to this festival, but also to the world. I'm pulling up your bio right now because I know you very well. But no, I mean, I never can do like the whole bio because everybody on the show is always so great.
So it's weird for Ondi to
I'm
say anything about my bio.
I'm learning things. I'm going to pull up your bio. Most notable projects of the past 15 years, Zach Clark's little sister that played here actually, Owner Tukel's Summer of Blood, and Daniel Scheinart's The Death of Dick Long, which is here this year. Melodie's films have played everything from South by to Sundance to Tribeca to Edinburgh to BAM, Cinema Fest, Slam Dance, and are available around the world. And she also has recently relocated, so born in Asheville, North Carolina, moved up to New York City, and then relocated down to Atlanta, Georgia, which I actually learned about in the bio, like in preparing for this show, which I was just like, what?
Boo.
Yeah, I'll come more often now that she's there. And apparently you're involved in some kind of incredible community of filmmakers in Atlanta.
Literally in my bio, I rep Molly Coffey's organization because I just support them so much and think that what she's doing is incredible. So 90% of this thing, I'm just going to defer to Molly. My actual bio says at the bottom of it, like, I'm super proud to be supportive of FIG, which is the Film Impact Georgia movement, and that is Molly's organization.
Okay, so I guess we're moving on to Molly. Without further ado. Molly produces a weekly podcast called Atlanta Film Chat with over 200 episodes. So I'm starting to get intimidated just sitting here right now. Molly's going to take over the show. But you are an award-winning filmmaker with, you kicked off with puppets and stop motion. Is that right?
It's correct. Yes.
And somehow came to start FIG. What is the impetus for that?
Yeah, so Film Impact Georgia was really about kind of changing legislation in the state of Georgia to quit focusing on Marvel and Netflix and just production and stages and things like that, and change from a grassroots level to focus on local content, independent filmmakers, funding Georgia, and really like focusing on what we had to offer as opposed to just runaway productions. So, and then HB 481 happened and kind of co-opted what we were doing. So now we're splitting our time in between that and what we're actually doing. We've done grants, we're doing development labs and whatnot. We're just trying to change the landscape of what it means to be a filmmaker in Georgia.
Has that changed your lifelong dream to hunt for Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest?
Oh no, that's still 100% a focus. Evidently in Pennsylvania, there have been a lot of sightings recently, which I have trouble believing because he's in the Pacific Northwest. So I don't know what's going on in Pennsylvania.
And then your most recent film, Cracks. Tell us about that. Shot on 16 in partnership with Kodak. I'm all about that.
Yes,
I love that.
and it
Me
played
too.
last year at Sidewalk, which was awesome. So thank you very much, Sidewalk. That actually kind of what impetus from this idea. So we're going to kind of gloss over this, but I spent many years of my life homeless as like this crust punk train jumping kid, and I had like this guy who was my best friend who then I was very recently sexually assaulted in this hotel, and I told him about it, my best friend for many years of like train jumping and whatnot. I told him about my sexual assault. He didn't believe me, but not because he thinks that I'm a liar, but because he couldn't quantify this idea of someone who he'd seen get into fist fights, to get in, like, to go to punk rock shows, to drink whiskey and all these things. Like someone he'd seen be this like really punk rock, graffiti-esque kind of like person. You know, he couldn't quantify that idea of a person with a victim. So I then didn't tell anybody else for a year about my sexual assault, and then instead made a film about it. And that was Cracks.
And it also deals with autism, right?
No, that's my feature film,
Oh,
Kayla,
okay.
age 8. Yeah.
Kaylee, age 8, which is coming up.
Well, is in development, and I hope to shoot next year. That's gonna be my first feature film. Yeah, and that's the thing that I was gonna make with Nancy, who was your DP for
Nancy
Maplethorpe.
Schreiber, the great legend of the light.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Also, we shot that on Super 16 and Super 8. It's actually showing on Sunday.
Yeah, film is incredible.
Film is, it's almost like film is a character in that film.
And
It's so beautiful.
And Kodak can be an incredible partner.
Oh my gosh.
For the record.
Ann Hubble, which we should
Yes.
mention, is Amy Hobby's partner at
Yes.
Tangerine.
And Anne is incredible and an amazing person
amazing.
who can, you know.
Make it happen at Kodak.
Yes, and you never get anything that you don't ask for the record. We literally reached out to Kodak and we were like, hey, we want to make this film about sexual assault. What can you do for us? They were like, I don't know, 1,200 feet of film. We were like, okay, we're going to make a film with 1,200 feet. And so we did. So
They're actually really generous.
yeah,
They're
they gave us
incredible.
1,200 feet
Yeah.
of
Well,
film
Steve
for free.
Bellamy,
I'm
the
also doing a
president,
film on Super 16, and they're being really lovely.
I mean, I was like the guest speaker for the LA Film Festival retreat, mate, rest in peace, LA Film Festival. But I was out in the desert. I was their speaker. I guess Ryan Coogler had to like cancel. I was in Israel. They called. They're like, can you be here tomorrow? I was like, I'm flying back tomorrow. So I went. And I ended up seated next to Steve Bellamy at dinner. Just a great story because it's just really, you just got to keep your antenna open in this life. And I sat down to dinner and he said, are you going to shoot Maplethorpe on digital? And I was like, well, I mean, I guess. I mean, the Alexa, I guess, is like what's in the budget right now. And he was like, that would be a crime against humanity and art. And I was like, well, if you want to stop me from committing a crime, you need to help me and make it affordable. And they did. They absolutely did. Yeah. And he'll throw you short ends, and so will Ann. I mean, they'll just make it happen because they know how much it means. And it actually means a lot.
You'll
Come
end
awards.
up buying more.
What?
They also know you'll end up buying more.
Oh yeah, you just become like
the feet they give you is not enough.
Yeah, no.
But it's still budget friendly.
Yeah, they'll still work out a deal, especially if you say you've been here at WeTalk. Yeah. Before we go too far down the film road, let's talk about this woman to my right, Stacey Davis, filmmaker and entertainment attorney. We got the law in the house. Made her directorial debut this year with the dramedy short Cherry, which we saw a poster for already. You produced Sibling Code, which screened at over a dozen film festivals, executive produced over half a dozen films, including Lynn Shelton's Sword of Trust, which shot here in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know if you've seen this film. I saw it.
Good.
It is
so
so good. I
See
saw
it at the
DGA.
festival.
2:40 on Sunday. Check it out.
That actually doesn't
She also
conflict with
EP'd
either
my-
of my screenings, so I condone it. In fact, I might go and see it again. We have
She
a trailer
also
to
executive
convince you.
produced my film Little Sister that's on Netflix, so check that out too.
What is it? Okay, so before oh wait, and the big one, big claim to fame, president of the board of directors of Sidewalk. Which is technically called the Sidewalk Film Center and Cinema.
Yes. Has everyone checked out the cinema yet?
There's a new cinema in town.
It's our baby. It's our new love. It's beautiful.
That's so great. Congratulations on that. I know it's been a race to the finish. I wore my yellow pants just to celebrate.
I know. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yay. We heart Sidewalk.
We do. And we also heart Lynn Shelton, who can't be here, and we heart Sort of Trust, which we're going to take a look at because it has shots of the beautiful Birmingham. Let's look at that and then come back and talk about some serious issues.
What you are looking at
Yes.
is a genuine relic that supports the actual truth, which is the South won the war.
Okay. The South won the war?
That's right. This is something you want to keep under your hat till you're ready to
Seems
not
like
keep
pretty
it under
big
your
news.
hat.
Best way to do this is through concrete evidence.
Is this antique roadshow for racists?
Up to $50,000.
God damn it.
What's the deal?
70-30 sounds fair to me.
Please don't touch.
I can't touch the tag.
Don't touch the tag.
Honey, 70-30?
Is it 70 for us?
No.
No deal.
30 for us. No deal.
There's gonna be other offers on this, because the word's out.
Words out.
Came here looking for something.
Uh-huh.
Heard you have it.
Can we narrow it down a little?
We're looking for a sword.
All right.
A sword.
Why was that so hard?
It wasn't hard.
Wasn't hard.
Why did we have to take that route to get there?
30 seconds to get there. It
Didn't
wasn't
take
that long.
Let's just be on the same page. We're just trying to sell this thing for a lot of money, and that's that.
Bam.
This is definitely how people die. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're capable of.
We're in this together. Me, you, the two ladies. We just got to get that $40,000. I'm so hard right now. I can barely keep my mind straight.
Wait a minute. Are you using that word right?
Down a country like this, wind up in a ditch dead and nobody'd ever find you.
You spend a lot of time thinking, like, how can these people think like this,
No,
right?
you're right, man.
We're in the brain of that.
Yeah, we're about to find out.
Apparently it's carpeted.
Yeah. Stacey, how did you become involved in that?
Ted Speaker, who produced the film, called me up initially to act as their production counsel for the film. So that's how I sort of got in the door, and then just became more involved with the project. And my involvement sort of evolved throughout the course. And it was just so wonderful to work with so many local Birmingham talents on the film, and to see Lynn. For those of you who know Lynn, she's never shot outside of Washington before. This is the first time that she's shot anywhere else, and for her to come tell this. So there's Southern story down here in Birmingham, and to make it truly authentic, I think is really special.
And it was shot, she told us, or I think she just told me, but hopefully it's okay, 12 days. 12
Crazy.
days
It was
of production.
It was super quick,
Yeah.
tight, in and out.
And she
back
said
in
it was
days.
such a great crew here in Birmingham that she was able to work with both local actors and everybody behind the camera that made it possible.
There's a wealth of talent here in Alabama, specifically in Birmingham, and she really tapped into that. And she did bring a few folks from out of town, and obviously they were fantastic too. But to utilize so many local resources was really special.
And you've all shot here, you all worked here, and so many of the women that have been on WeTalk today have. And then suddenly this really restrictive law is passed, the Alabama Human Life Protection Act, which makes a fetus a legal person, and it makes abortion a felony, and compares abortion to Holocaust or genocide. And we know that the same thing, a slightly less restrictive law in Georgia. But basically, it's worse than killing somebody. I mean, you go to, it's very punishable. And already abortion rates have been dropping steadily. But I don't know where the impetus or the need came from for this restrictive law, like where did it come from? But there's been in the wake of it, there's been so many boycotts. There's hashtag boycott Alabama. And, looking at that and just kind of like looking at all the filmmakers that have pulled out. I mean, The Power pulled out of shooting in Georgia. Director Reed Morano of Handmaid's Tale is quoted as saying, "There's no way we would ever bring our money to that state by shooting there." Kristen Wiig's film Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar pulled out from shooting in Georgia.
Not true.
Yeah, Christine Vachon of Killer Films and Mark Duplass and Nina Jacobson of Color Force have all vowed to boycott the state. Alyssa Milano called for the industry to pull out on May 9th. I mean, in some ways, it's a really emotional reaction to, what many would call fascist law. But what I know from coming to Sidewalk and spending time here with filmmakers is that, filmmakers are probably also the least likely to be on the side of such a ban. But yet that industry, it's across many industries, but that industry must be hurting here. It's got to be having an impact. Is it hurting the right people? At the end of the day, what does the boycott do? Is the boycott good or bad? And I'd love to hear your opinions on that.
Bad, very bad.
Well, first off, I think that we need to talk about optics, because it's interesting that you bring up Reed Morano's show and Kristen Wiig's show in particular, because at the time the Kristen Wiig show made the statement that they were not going to shoot in the state of Georgia, their production office was already open in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So for the record, they never intended on shooting in the state of Georgia. So that was a PR stunt.
Wow.
Reed Morano's show, at that time, they did, for the record, have conversations with us about the fact that they, because of the nature of their show being a la kind of Handmaid's Tales and whatnot, that the optics were that they couldn't be in the state of Georgia. So they needed to pull out. They had already had direct spend in the state of Georgia. They were the one that we were like, okay, this is real loss for the state of Georgia. This is really bad. Haven't set up new offices. Then Variety comes out with a story saying that they've lost funding. Okay, so now what are we talking about? So it's so there's a larger conversation kind of in all of this to be had about optics, because when you say a word like boycott, it is a very loaded word, because a boycott implies that you are punishing the right people, like you're asking with this question, When you say boycott, who in this particular situation are you hurting? Because, before even I obviously am from Georgia, so I'm speaking kind of specifically about Georgia. Before HB 481, which is our abortion ban, before it was even passed, film workers were in the state capitol having press conferences, about the upcoming bill that was going to be passed, so we were there, we were organizing, we were, we had groups of women that were meeting, trying to figure out how to lobby our local film organizations to make statements, despite the fact that categorically they never have in the past gotten involved in politics and these kind of things. And we have been able to leverage that kind of power to get organizations that over and over and over again have not made statements, yet IATSE, which cannot land on one side or the other on an issue because they represent both sides of this issue in their membership. We got them to donate $50,000 to the ACLU in Alabama and Georgia. That is huge,
Why? How did you manage that?
Because of organization, because of the members making statements.
Yeah, let's applaud that, please. That's amazing, right? And very difficult. Hard work on Molly's part.
It is people becoming involved and becoming organized, taking a stand, doing things the correct way. But we can't do that if the work that pays our bill leaves, if the people that vote, the people that are organizing have to leave the state to follow the work, at the end of the day, leave. Who are you hurting when you say that you want to hurt a boycott? You know, we could even have a larger conversation, you know, about, you know, when we're talking about optics and a boycott and things like that. You know, we have people saying that they're taking work from Georgia to Louisiana because of optics. Louisiana has a completely equal abortion ban, you know, to the state of Georgia.
That, by the way, was passed after. So
In Georgia, just to clarify, if one is raped or subjected to incest, then their abortion is legal up to 20 weeks.
unlike Alabama and
Alabama,
Louisiana?
you're screwed.
Other
no matter
than
what.
for the serious health of the woman, which is completely vague. You know, what does that mean? But that's the only exception under the Alabama.
I mean, there's no way to look at this than to look at it as hatred of women. There's nothing, there's no
It's
control.
an assault of human rights.
Control is what someone just
But
said.
they're telling us
it's
that the
legal rape,
optics
if you
are
ask me.
different.
I think it's legal rape.
What?
But they're telling us that the optics are different in Louisiana versus the optics in Georgia.
Right.
Optics, because
Yeah.
of the press, because
Yeah.
of headlines in the media.
So basically, the headlines were already out about Alabama and Georgia, and nobody was paying attention by the time Louisiana happened.
What
so
can-
the optics aren't as bad.
What
the
can-
legality is the same.
Right. Stacey, what's happening here in Alabama?
You know, we haven't seen the film industry in Alabama, although it's growing and certainly on the rise, hasn't grown to the extent that it has in Georgia. It doesn't have the same economic impact. That it's not the same type of economic driver. So our situations are a little bit different in that respect. So we have seen pushback. We have seen filmmakers who decided not to submit to the Sidewalk Film Festival because they didn't want to be associated with the state. We have seen filmmakers who were accepted to the film festival have second thoughts, and Rachel Morgan, our creative director, had to sort of work overtime to try to pull those pictures back into the festival, because that's the reason that we're here. You know, to pull those types of stories, for me, I mean, we're talking about the short-sightedness of the economic boycott in Georgia, and I can expand upon that, but to pull those types of stories from Sidewalk Film Festival, which is one of the only mechanisms or avenues for which people in the state can see that type of work, I think runs completely counter to what they're trying to achieve, right? So somebody in New York or LA or Kansas even, they want to make a statement and they want to show solidarity and support perhaps for the women and, well, anyone really who cares about human rights in the state. So they think, oh, well, I'm doing something, I'm going to have an impact. But what you're actually doing is counterproductive to what we need. Everybody in Alabama needs to see those stories. We need to see a wide variety of diverse storytelling in our state that happens through Sidewalk. And if you pull out your stories back, then that's exactly the opposite of what you need to be doing. So one of the things that's really frustrated me about the economic boycott in Georgia, which has been much more successful than anything that's happened here, just again because it's larger, is it just seems so short-sighted in the short term for all the reasons that Molly just said, that it's directly impacting the women who have just had their human rights assaulted via the ban, which, by the way, has not, it's a bill that was passed, it has not been put into place. It's being challenged in the courts.
Yeah.
And to go back to your question of what was the impetus of all of this, to be challenged in the courts, right? We all know that the long game for these people is to have it challenged by the United States Supreme Court, because they now think that they have a majority on the court and they can overturn Roe v. Wade. So that's the long game for the folks who are putting forth this agenda. And we know that because the state legislators in Alabama have been very clear that that's their purpose. So that's their long game. Well, what's our long game? Our long game can't be pitting one another against ourselves, right? We can't have progressives in California pitting themselves against progressives in Georgia over a fight on the film industry, because that's not going to help anything. We're this close to turning the governor race in Alabama from red to blue last cycle. Do you think driving out all of those progressive filmmakers who voted is going to help? It's not. It's exactly
Really, yeah.
what we don't need. So
Same for Georgia.
So
Georgia's very close to becoming a swing state, so.
Yeah, and that is the larger issue in which you kind of have to ask yourself is, you know, as you do call for a boycott of these abortion ban states, like, look at what the long game is, as Stacey is talking about, of why they are targeting the states that they're targeting. Why did they roll out in these states in particular as they go into it? Like Georgia in particular did come very close to being flipped even in the last elections. So now as we go into these presidential elections in a state like Georgia that is so close to being a swing state, how does that affect something like the presidential election? Like how could that play into the longer game with like President Trump, you know, like really think at and analyze how this plays into how the Republican Party is looking at the longer game in the United States. Like this isn't.
They know what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing.
So we
and
need
there's
to know
a
what
lot
we're
of money behind it. And if you Google a little bit, you might be able to figure out where the money's coming from.
It's really sinister. It's really smart. What can we do as filmmakers? What can we do as citizens to turn the tide on the boycott? Is there like a no boycott Alabama hashtag or?
Bring your movies here.
Yeah, bring your movies
That's what you
here.
can do. You can bring your movies here. You can hire the three of us. And Stacey's my attorney, by the way, and she's real good. But legitimately, I mean, I continue to aggressively accept films in the South over films outside of the South because it's important to me to continue to employ people in these states who, by the way, are the vast majority liberal voters who need to stay in these states. We need them here. We need to keep the blue people here. And it's very easy to run away to places that you feel seen, and that's important. I'm an openly gay person. It was important to me as a young woman to leave the South and to go feel seen in New York. And I did that, but I came back because this is a fight worth fighting. And we need to make sure that we do not abandon young queer people and young white people, young black people, young fucking women. Like, we do not need to abandon these kids that are growing up feeling otherness or just who don't agree with their parents. Like, we have to make sure that there's diversity in thought and in the South. And the fact is, the South is diverse. It's wildly diverse, more diverse than the rest of the country, by the way. But we get a bad reputation. And it's extremely important that we continue to make sure that we come back. Go explore the world. Come back. And come back and have your voice and vote and advocate for other people to vote and keep telling stories that are diverse and Southern.
Yeah, tell stories about disempowered women that are being raped and need abortions or growing up on the wrong side of the tracks.
I'm someone who had an abortion. I'm openly gay. I had an abortion when I was in my very late teens, early 20s, and in a situation that was like probably what you would consider date rape or whatever. Fucking rape, by the way. And had an abortion. And that experience, I was in New York City, thank God, where it was very, very easy for that to happen for me, but life impactful. And also really motivated me to come out because I was like, oh, all of this is very telling. Like, you look at yourself and what you're doing and the choices you're making and you go like, wow.
It's not very kind to the fetus either if the mother's not in a position to raise.
No, I was in no position to raise a child, didn't want to raise a child. And I was too young and made all the right decisions in that moment. And I'm so proud of myself, and I'm glad that I'm the person that I am. I wouldn't be the person I am if I hadn't made that choice.
Yeah. I made a short film about Amanda Palmer, the musician, who's also just a meteor of a human.
Watch her TED Talk.
Powerful
It's so
woman.
good.
Watch her TED Talk, The Art of Asking. But I want to give her a shout out because I saw her show recently, and she came here and she brought it here.
I saw the show here.
Yeah, she invited me down. It was at the Ace in LA, and of course that's a perfectly liberal place to play. But it's about her abortions. It's a show. It's literally a stand-up show, and this is just to give all of you ideas in case you're like, what can I do? What can I do? She does a show about it, and gets the entire audience to raise their hands, if they've had an abortion, if they know people with abortions. She tells her story of her 4 abortions and why they happened. And, it's just incredible to kind of remove the stigma away from it all, but to look at it and go, okay, clearly there is a strategy. There's a political strategy going on. This is where it's going to be easy to pass a ban. This is where we could drive the liberals out and the states will go red. So we really need to work to not have that happen. And I don't know.
And it's interesting that you bring that up because, as we move forward, these abortion bans are so wildly unconstitutional that it is going to be though it's like going to be a long battle, it's going to be very easy to knock them down in the courts. So there are going to be other ways that they are going to attack these states, whether it is religious liberty bills, other things like that. So, we need to continue to try to stay educated, and we also need to continue to try to ask the people in these situations that are marginalized what they need, as opposed to telling them what they need. We all sit up here, and like the people that are the most marginalized in the situations are the people of color, are these women who, Georgia has the largest maternal mortality rate in the world, in the United States. The fact that black women of color in particular are dying of childbirth, like we're a third world country, is insane. So the fact that we're telling them that we're just going to abandon them and boycott, what they need, like we should be talking about that as opposed to just abandoning them.
Should we do like ban the boycott or?
Yeah.
Let's everybody go to your social media.
Right. Well, we say hashtag
mention that you
hashtag stay and fight is like really what we say.
Hashtag stay and fight.
Okay, but some of us don't live here.
I know, right?
Well, then come here, please. Join us.
Okay.
Make your movies here. I'm not kidding. I'm a producer. I'll produce your movie. Come here.
I'm getting the wrap it up symbol, but is there anything that we haven't covered? Are we good? We all know what to tweet. We all know what to post. Stay and fight.
We just want people to be thoughtful, like become educated. Try to think about if something's happening in the world, try to think about, if our president is saying something really crazy, maybe ask yourself, what is he trying to divert your thoughts from that's really happening behind the scenes?
The destruction of the environment and of our lives.
Right.
In a nutshell.
Right. I think it's really.
Stacey, I was going to literally throw it to you. So.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's really important to be a voice. So I was on the phone recently with in-house counsel for a production company up in New York, and we were talking legal things and the niceties that we always start with on our conversations. And it was just after they had passed the bill in Alabama, and she was, sort of asking what the scene was like, et cetera. And she was talking about, this was the beginning of the summer, that she was planning to do a college tour with her daughter, and that they were going to drive to the South, but that they were now no longer going to come to Georgia or Alabama because they were going to boycott. And I'm on a professional call, so I'm sort of listening, and I'm being nice, and I'm being kind, and I just sort of gloss over the situation and move on. And we did our business, and I hung up the phone, and I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed with myself that I did not speak up, that I was more worried about being kind and polite on this professional call than I was worried about being purposeful and impactful and telling her, no, that's the exact opposite of what you need to do. You need to bring your daughter here and meet the people in Birmingham and Alabama, in Georgia and Alabama, and have these important conversations and expand her mindset. And I didn't, and I was quiet. And that just was a lesson to me that I need to have more purposeful conversations. It's not easy, it's not gonna be comfortable, but I'm not doing my job unless I'm doing that, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That's really great. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. I wanna make sure that all of you know how to get in touch with these women so that when you do move your production here, you know where to start.
Melodie Sisk film@gmail.com.
We're going to post it. Well, it's at WeTalk Culture, on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll post everybody's
And we're around
contact
all
with your
weekend.
permission.
You can also
And
get in touch
we're
with me
around.
at Melodie Sisk.
I'll hook you up with both these ladies anytime.
Just see Melodie.
Thank you so much for coming and bringing the show and having these important
Yes, thank you.
conversations.
I'm
We
honored.
really appreciate
I'm honored. Thank you. Melodie, Molly, and Stacey. Thank you for coming on We Talk. We have one more panel, but before that, let's make sure we all connect and turn this into action. And then Jacqueline will come up, and we're going to talk about Always in Season, which is also showing here, which is about the civil rights movement and where it needs to go, and where it still is, unfortunately, mired. So, but still come here. It's going to freak you out, but still come here. All right. Thank you.